This place looks eternal, miles of pure white stretching further than the eye can see. But Bonneville isn't just empty desert. This is sacred ground for speed. For nearly a century, legends have come here to test engineering, ingenuity, and themselves. The photographs taken on this salt are burned into motorsport history. I mean, motorcycles have been named after here because this isn't just a place to go fast, it's an icon. It even inspired a man from New Zealand, Burt Munro, who hauled his Indian motorcycle halfway across the world for a chance to ride here, which was dramatized in the film The World's Fastest Indian with Anthony Hopkins. And that movie lit a fire for a new generation of riders to make the pilgrimage to Bonneville. So before the bikes take to the salt here in about an hour, I want to share the story of this place. My hope is that it'll help you appreciate how remarkable Bonneville truly is, and maybe inspires you to come see this for yourself while you still can. People have been testing speed on the Bonneville Salt Flats for more than 100 years. As far back as the early 1910s, the flats were already being recognized as a natural high-speed surface. And by the 30s and 40s, motorcycles and cars were using the salt to push the limits of speed and endurance. But in 1948, Raleigh Free's famous run on his Vincent became one of the defining images of Bonneville. And that image has often been called the coolest motorcycle photo of all time. And in the decades that followed, legends like Burt Munro and Cal Rayborn helped turn the salt into a proving ground for riders, builders, and manufacturers chasing the title of fastest on Earth. Over time, those runs helped turn Bonneville Salt Flats into hallowed ground, a cathedral of speed shaped by more than a century of ambition, ingenuity, and risk. A place where every run carries the weight of the riders who came before. When you stand here and step onto the salt and look across the endless expanse, it feels like this land will never change. I mean, all of this was formed when an Ice Age lake, Lake Bonneville, vanished, leaving behind a glittering crust of salt. And at one time, it was more than 6 feet thick. Endless amounts of salt. But as much as Bonneville feels timeless, things are changing. For over 100 years, racers have come here chasing world speed records. And now, many wonder if we're living through the final chapters. The salt is thinning. The future of Speed Week is uncertain. And this sacred ground may not survive another decade, let alone another century. Let me show you something. This is the salt today. It's less than half an inch thick. Once this salt used to be measured in feet, and today it's just a fragile skin. Decades of mining and years of drought have stripped this hallowed land down to its bones. And every year, racers whisper the same fear. How many speed weeks do we really have left? To understand where all that salt went, you have to stop thinking of Bonneville as a stagnant rock. It's a living, breathing respiratory system. Every year, the flats perform a delicate cycle of inhalation and exhalation. In the winter, they inhale water as snowmelt and rain flood the basin, dissolving the surface into a shallow, briny lake. In the summer, they exhale through evaporation, redepositing those dissolved minerals back into the hard white crust that we race on. But today, the lungs of Bonneville are failing. The primary driver of this decline is the industrial footprint of the Intrepid potash plant, located just south of Interstate 80. Potash is a potassium-rich salt used globally as a fertilizer to help crops survive. Intrepid mines it by tapping into the natural brine stored deep beneath the salt crust and pumping it into giant solar evaporation ponds. What makes this thinning so tragic is how little the Wendover plant actually contributes to the world's supply. Globally, the potash market is a 76 million ton machine dominated by massive mines in Canada and Russia. The Wendover plant is a tiny player by comparison. Its annual production is less than 1/10 of 1% of the global supply. If the pumps at Wendover stopped tomorrow, the global fertilizer market would barely blink. In other words, we aren't trading the salt flats for global food security, but we're also being squeezed by the changing climate that makes this fragile breathing cycle even more erratic. Between the 60s and the late 80s, long droughts meant there isn't enough fresh water to dissolve and heal the salt into a smooth surface, while sudden flash floods are often too violent, washing the salt away rather than letting it settle. Since 1997, a salt laydown project has attempted to pump brine back onto the surface, but it's a desperate measure for a system that is fundamentally broken. The salt is disappearing faster than we can replace it. It's counting down the life of the fastest landscape on Earth. Racing on salt is nothing like racing on pavement. The surface here is rough and bumpy, and it offers limited grip. Racers get a mile just to build up speed before the timed section, and then they have to run it in both directions to set a record. And then there's something called salt slip. The rear wheel can spin about 10% faster than the bike is actually traveling. In other words, the salt is stealing speed the whole time.
So different. Sure, I can go whatever on my Ducati or whatever on my Triumph, whatever on the Norton, but it's so different on the salt. It's such a different experience. But I am kind of floating. It's this very strange in-between asphalt and sand feeling.
And because the moisture content in the salt is always changing, the level of grip changes too, sometimes even from hour to hour.
If you're on asphalt, running 100 miles an hour, on the salt, you'd be doing good to get 80. The traction is totally different.
Because the flats are thinning year by year, the salt now buckles and fractures like ice on a river. And every season makes the surface a little more fragile, and race prep has become a battle with the surface that no longer wants to stay whole. Organizers have had to build a gentler drag, one designed to smooth the course without tearing up the fragile crust. The old methods are too rough for what's left. In cars, small bumps can be unsettling but manageable. On motorcycles, the same imperfections can be far more dangerous, turning a bad patch of surface into a life-threatening risk. Then you add in the altitude. We're already at 4,500 feet, almost 1,400 meters above sea level. And yesterday afternoon, it was 105 degrees Fahrenheit. That's over 40 degrees in the rest of the world. So as the day warms up, the air gets thinner still. Racers call this density altitude, and every run literally takes life out of the engine. But maybe the hardest part of all of this is the emptiness. Out here, there are no reference points, just a horizon that never moves and some flags. Riders can't rely on visual cues to sense speed, and it's easy to get disoriented. At Bonneville, the machine and the rider are tested in ways that you'll never find anywhere else. Despite those brutal conditions, Bonneville is perhaps the most democratic racetrack in the world. While MotoGP and World Superbike are basically gated communities for the ultra-wealthy, the Salt Flats belong to anyone with a wrench and a dream. You don't need a factory contract or a six-figure sponsorship to see your name in the record books. You just need to show up.
So this is the IAMI key from 1968, which is my birth year. Okay, that's a 250 souped up, and we're expecting to break the record at 83 miles an hour.
We're going for 108, and we're coming from 99, so I think I can do it. I know I can do it.
Whatever's comfortable. He said top speed maybe in 125 or so. We'll see if I get it out at second. So
I'm riding a Z125, and I'm hoping to go 60.
What's the record?
That's 54 and a half.
54 and a half?
We got that. I'm riding an SX 650, running in the 750 class, and hopefully to do 105.
It's a Ducati Monster, and I'm hoping to get 125.
I'm riding a 95 Buell S2. Been riding it for 8 years, and hopefully I go over 139.634.
The beauty of Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trials is the sheer scale of the opportunity. There are over 700 different racing classes. So whether you're running a 50cc moped from the 60s, an electric bike with a handmade sidecar, or a modern turbocharged leader bike, there is a specific category designed for exactly what you built in your garage.
So with the shifting, there's no rear controls, so everything's done up here with these two shifters. They are connected, so they move together. And then it shifts, comes down, hits this pivot point, down to the shifter. So the way I do it is when I start off, I have the clutch pulled in, I bump it in first with my right hand, get on the throttle, start rolling on the throttle, let out the clutch, and then I just wrap it all the way up, and then I have to let go with this hand, and I just reach down and burp the throttle and just tap it into gear.
Sometimes that garage build is a piece of living history. Two legendary Vincents racing at the same time. These are the descendants of the Black Lightning, the same machine Raleigh Free made famous in 1948. One of these teams traveled all the way from Australia, hauling a 60-year-old masterpiece across an ocean just to see what it could do on that white crust. To see two Vincents in the same paddock is rare. To see them both pinned as they race against the horizon is a little bit of a miracle. It reminds you that Bonneville is a sanctuary for the mechanical soul. The salt has a way of infecting people. You see it every year. Someone shows up just to watch, or perhaps work as an umbrella girl for a bigger team.
First year, my only job was to hold the umbrella.
But 5 years later, she's the one in the leathers, and on her very first run, she made it to the far side of 130 miles an hour.
Like, if you had a mic on me, you would have heard like 3, 4, and then I ran out of shift, so it was like quarter mile, half mile, and it was awesome. And like by the time I crossed the 3 at the end of the time mile, like I just started like tearing up and crying, and like just knowing that I did that, and that, I don't know, that just feeling of just wide open. It's just you and the salt, and you're just going, and I loved it.
This is the real opportunity of Bonneville. It isn't about where you start, it's about the fact that the salt makes room for you. You find father and daughter teams who spent years in a garage at 2 a.m. hand-hammering fuel tanks for a bike that might only go 60 miles an hour. Whether you're chasing a record at 60 or hope to earn a red hat for going over 200, the respect is universal. The salt doesn't care about your pedigree, it only cares about your persistence. This shared struggle creates a culture of generosity that is unlike any other paddock in the world. This is an eclectic cast of characters, veterans in wide-brimmed hats, young rookies, and couples who have spent their entire lives chasing the horizon together. The code of the salt is simple. You never want to see a bike sit still. The racer, whose name is currently in the record book, will be the first person to hand you the sprocket you need to take that record away from them. You'll see rivals fixing each other's engines and strangers holding shade for a rider they've never met. We often talk about Bonneville in terms of speed, but for the people who live for this week, it's really about the run. It's about showing up with something unfinished and believing it deserves a chance to move. The salt may be thinning and the future may be uncertain, but the spirit of this community is one thing the extraction and the droughts haven't been able to touch. Bonneville isn't really a spectator sport the way it is for most of motorcycle racing. You won't see motorcycles tearing across the salt flats from start to finish. Safety keeps you pretty far away from the course. But nowhere else in the world do you get to wander the pits and talk with the racers and become part of their journey. The people who come here are as eclectic as the machines they ride. Every motorcycle, every class, every character has its own story, and together they make this event unlike any other. Bonneville is more than just speed. It's a living community, a shared dream, and a reminder of what's possible when passion for two wheels and an unreasonable desire for high amounts of forward velocity meets the horizon. So yeah, you should come see it while you still can, because just like the salt beneath our feet, this remarkable tradition may not last forever. If you felt the pull of the white horizon while watching this, know that the gate is open. Bonneville isn't a spectator sport meant to be viewed from a distance. It's an invitation. So whether you want to volunteer or support the preservation of the flats, or eventually line up at the start yourself, the path starts with the Bonneville Motorcycle Speed Trials. This event is run by an all-volunteer organization that lives and breathes this salt. You can find the full rulebook, class listings, and registration details at BonnevilleMST.com. If you aren't ready to twist the throttle just yet, consider joining the fight to save this landscape. Groups like Save the Salt are working every day to pressure for the restoration of the crust, ensuring that 0.1% of global potash doesn't cost us the fastest place on Earth. The salt is thinning, but it isn't gone. There's still time to walk this cathedral, to hold a wrench for a stranger, and to find out exactly how fast your own dreams can go. Don't wait for the final chapter to be written. Come out to Wendover, see it, smell it, and race it. Because once you've tasted the salt, the horizon never looks the same again. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider clicking like and subscribing if you'd like to see more content like this. Ride on and ride well.